Hey everybody, Neil Teresiano here, your host for Vology's Wireside Chats. We're here for a special edition of Partner Spotlight, where we're going to take a look at HP's product suite, specifically under HP Networking, the 5900CP. So I have with me here today George Casos from HP. George is both a propeller head and a rack monkey. He gets to not only do a lot of design work and have a lot of phone conversations about the networks, but he also gets to break into some of the data centers and rack up and even configure, stand up some of these environments. I'm sure not as much as he'd like to, though, right, George?
Yeah, I mean, it's more on the proof of concept pre-sale side. I certainly don't get as much as I'd like to, but yes.
No, that's the sign of a true sales engineer, right? If you're willing to get away from the grease board. So I appreciate you making it here today. We're very excited to talk about a switch that I think HP has put a lot of time and effort, research development into. Offers a lot of value and a lot of features, specifically on one topic, which is data center conversion. So, if I may, let's get straight to it, George. From your perspective, what is data center convergence when it comes to the networking side?
So, I mean, I think we hear a lot today about convergence, right? Mm-hmm. Converged infrastructure, converged data center, that type of thing. And the reality is, traditionally, everything's been siloed, right? We have our networking, we have our storage, we have our servers, etc. And the idea of data center convergence is to take the networking, the Ethernet networking side and the storage side and converge it into one network, right? A converged network.
What are some of the benefits of data center convergence? And keep it high level. If I'm a business owner, how does that help me out when I have to run the business unit of IT?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with cutting costs in the enterprise data center, right? And I think the biggest area where we see that in convergence is the server I/O consolidation, right? So we're simplifying the connectivity from the servers to both the Ethernet network and the storage network, right? So we reduce the number of hardware, the NICs that we need. We reduce the cabling. We can reduce the ports on the switches and reduce power as we have less devices in the network, right? And all of that translates down into lower CapEx and lower OpEx.
Right, because I have to buy less switches, right? And I need to manage and carry maybe service attachments on less switches.
Certainly.
And I think, you wouldn't necessarily argue against the idea that it should be or could be a little easier to manage for an IT department, considering that in this case, converging the switch means I'm taking many different switches and switch functions and putting them into one particular switch and managing it, I assume, under one single pane of glass?
One single pane of glass, that's right. That's a perfect entryway into kind of why, what's HP's vision of the data center, what's HP's vision of the converged data center, right? So, and I think the products we're going to talk about today are a perfect example of this convergence. We're going to talk about the 5900CP, right, which is a converged Ethernet SAN switch. We're going to talk about some universal optics or converged optics that enable us to either use Ethernet, 1 gig, 10 gig Ethernet, or 4, 8, or 16 gig fiber channel.
Okay.
Right? And really, to a lesser degree, we're going to talk about converged storage on the 3-power side, with FCOE, right? So,
sure.
I mean, we have a lot of different products. We have a lot of different product families, but all of them are working on kind of the common goals of convergence. So, but the bigger picture and what we see in the data center is really comes down to simplify, right? So we're going to wire once. We have these great optics that allow us to, put the switch in, put these optics in, and no matter what our needs are today, whether they're Ethernet or fiber channel or FCOE, right? We don't have to change anything out.
That's a great point, yeah.
Software configure that, right, in the switch, right? So we're going to simplify, we're going to converge, and all of this conversation is about converge, right? So we have a lot of different port options on the switches as well as the optics. And then finally, we're going to automate. We have different platforms to help automate and manage this whole process. So IMC, Intelligent Management Center.
That's the single pane of glass, right, that we use to manage the network on.
Our single pane of glass. And we have several different modules for IMC, virtual application. We also have the Fabric Manager, the Virtual Fabric Manager, which is going to enable us to manage these converged Ethernet and fiber channel over Ethernet networks.
All under this one IMC.
All under IMC, that's correct.
Okay. Well, that sounds really exciting. So, folks, this is a two-part segment where we're going to go straight across the street over to the lab and meet up with one of our solutions architects, Matt Jolly. The really cool thing is that Matt has had an opportunity to play with these switches for a couple of months now. HP was nice enough to lend them to us. We're going to have them set up in our show and tell lab, and so George and that Matt Jolly can go over a few of the speeds and fees and get a little more technical with us. and get some of the answers that we've probably been waiting to hear about what the 5900 is capable of doing and how one would set that thing up and get it prepared so that you are future-proofing your network, right? So that if we decide to switch from an iSCSI SAN to a fiber channel SAN, we're not buying a SAN networking infrastructure, right, George? And also, if we plan on building out and using some of the other products out there that HP has to offer to connect with this, my ideas or my thoughts are that HP's vision of bringing this all under one single pane of glass, maybe even one day servers and networking and storage under one view together, wouldn't be too bad of an idea, right? To be able to just drag and drop and set things up so knuckleheads like me might be able to actually work on the infrastructure and help design some of these things so that we're a little more future-proof. So we're not buying these expensive SAN networks just so that we can have a small VDI environment, right? We run into this all the time, folks. This is a huge opportunity to take a look at some of the close-up features of the 5900 series CP switch. So we look forward to seeing you guys over in the lab. Well, hey everybody, George and I made it over to the lab to meet up with one of Vology's probably nerdiest and most intelligent propeller heads, Matt Jolly. Matt had the opportunity to take a look at, and you might not be able to see them now, but take a look at some of these really expensive switches. When I say expensive, actually, relatively speaking, they might not be as expensive as some of the competitive stuff. So first off, let me start off with George, our guy from HP, who should probably be able to answer every single question we have about the switch. So George, hopefully you're up for the challenge.
Absolutely. I have Matt here.
Right. So maybe Matt can help you out. So let's start off with this first, guys. Give us a high level on the 5900.
Sure. So general overview, 5900CP is our converged Ethernet storage switch, right? It provides 48 ports of 1 gig, 10 gig Ethernet, or 4 8 gig fiber channel ports. It also supports obviously iSCSI and fiber channel over Ethernet. Has 4 40 gig ports on it for high speed uplinks, either switch to switch connections or potentially connections to your blade servers, right? As well as it's based on COMWare 7, which is HP's next gen operating system, right? It's built for the data center, provides a bunch of new data center features such as FCOE, data center bridging, Trill, SPB, OpenFlow, right? OpenFlow, which is really
1.3,
critical,
right?
1.3, which is critical for software-defined networking initiatives. And because of the way it's very modular and it has a lot of separation between planes, which allows us to do things like in-service software upgrades on switches and things
While it
like
stays
that.
up and running when you say in service.
Yes, so,
Right.
yes. And it's a fully layer 2, layer 3 capable switch. And the beautiful thing is this: look, we talk about, we support FCOE, we support fiber channel on this, data center bridging, Trill, all the routing protocols, right? OSPF, RIP, BGP, ISIS. And there's one image and no licensing, right? So all these features, when you buy this, are with it today, right?
So there's not turning up ports, there's not licensing ports, turning them up. The QSFPs are just sitting here waiting to be
Waiting.
paid
Just
for.
however you want to provision them, basically.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, this is a very big switch. Okay, so I haven't seen a switch like this. Man, I'm sure you've probably seen a couple, but this guy is huge. Just looks like a pizza box server. We had to carry them in from my car to get them over here, and they're pretty heavy. But real quick, if we could, let's look at the front of this, and maybe I can rely on you engineers to give me a little bit of insight. This here, each of these are QSFP plus ports, right? So we've got them all the way down here?
Yeah, these are SFP plus. You got 48 ports here.
Okay,
So,
SFP,
like
not
George
QSFP.
said, you've got, they can be 1 or 10 gig.
Okay.
They can also be fiber channel. So what's cool is, you've got this transceiver, if you got that right there.
Sure.
So this transceiver right here is kind of the secret sauce. So this little guy here, in one transceiver, you can do 16 gig fiber channel. Actually, it's 4, 8, or 16 gig, so it's backwards compatible with legacy
Oh,
storage.
wow.
But it can also be 10 gig, right? And all you do is you just plug him in, provision it. It's basically wire once, provision once. If you want to change him from fiber channel to 10 gig iSCSI later, you can do that, which is really cool. And then, so he could be iSCSI, the guy right next to him could be fiber channel, right in the same switch. And it's all just
So that's the big deal, right, man? I mean, the fact that now I have an optic and a switch that I can receive native fiber channel, right?
Yep.
So we're talking native fiber channel, or FCOE, or iSCSI, or regular Ethernet traffic,
Well,
10 or 1. Can I carve that out?
Yeah, so what's unique about this, so HP's got the first transceiver like that it does all of it in the same transceiver. That's a game changer. That's really cool. So, and you can do it however you want, right? You can split this switch up. The old legacy way of doing it was keeping your server and storage
groups, right.
isolated. But the thing is, you've got so much power redundancy, you're going to mesh your connections between two switches. So, you can do that however you want, right? So it gives you all the flexibility that you need when you're doing this. And then, once you get down to this end as well, these are 40 gig ports, but let me show you this cable here that we've got. So,
And this is QSFP.
these are QSFP. I'll show you what that looks
And
like.
George, these are 40 gigs?
40 gig.
Okay, so these are 10,
These
and
are-
these
these
can
are-
be carved up any which way we want. So can I create from a converged network perspective, can I cut this up or carve this up, or is that done on a different layer? Is that something I do with a switch?
So basically, you can do whatever you want with this.
Okay.
Right. So basic function of a switch is you've got VLANs.
Right.
You can do full layer 2 and layer 3 with this as well.
Set this guy down, it's a little heavy.
Yep. So you can carve this up however you want. And remember, this is a data center product, so you've got to have the flexibility to do what you want with it in there, and you absolutely can. You can even do copper SFP. So if you want to do gig copper for like out of band,
There's really
things
no
like that,
limit to the options, right? On
You can do pretty much
connectivity.
whatever you want with this.
Okay, that's
right?
pretty cool.
So and then again, we're talking about
So that's one of the big boys. That's a QSFP.
Yep. This is what a QSFP looks like. So that's a 40 gig connection. So if you can get in on that right there. All right. But what's cool, you can do, 40 gig to 40 gig, or you can break that port out into 4 separate 10 gig ports. So,
Oh wow! So I can plug this big guy right into here, right?
You know, plug it in there.
Is that upside down? There we go.
There you go.
So that goes right in there, and then this delivers another 4 ports of this, essentially?
4 ports of 10 gig out of that. That's right. So this is usually going to be for like uplinking or high speed.
Right.
But if you need to have more 10 gig ports, you could do that through there. And again,
Wow.
like you said, no more licensing or anything, so it's exciting. So you're talking about with 2 ports
Another
here.
16 ports of 10 if I really needed it. I mean, I don't know that we would ever use that, but
Yeah.
this is really dense then. I
Yep.
mean, I can really get this thing. And can these guys, same scenario, right? Are these SFPs universal?
These are SFP plus. So pretty much any server out there, right, you're going to have standard SFP plus. You can plug it right into an HBA, a storage device. It doesn't matter. It's just straight 10 gig. There's nothing special about
Okay.
about that. There's no special
Well, this is why we have you guys here, so I got to ask you the question. Is this fiber channel also? Can I just
No,
plug this
so
in?
that is a difference there. This is going to be basically 40 gig, or it's going to be a 10 gig connection. So the fiber channel is going to come.
Capability is going to come in these port groups here.
That'll come out of these guys right here. Yep.
Oh, wow.
So and then here we've got there's another just straight QSFP 40 gig optic. This is
Okay.
going to go to fiber. So again, you can see this is a high speed copper cable.
Sure. Okay.
This would go into like a fiber, like an interconnect.
Okay.
So part of a data center switch is you're going to need redundancy. You've got fully hot swappable. Now you can order them front to back or back to front airflow on those, and that's for your power and your cooling. But you'll see here you've got a redundant fan.
So this is another power supply or fan?
This is actually the fan.
Okay.
He goes in, right up in next in here. So fans, you got redundant power supplies for that.
Oh wow. Okay.
So and those guys are again hot swappable.
All right. And then so this guy just goes in here next to this one.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. And then these are just your management uplinks and your
Yeah.
console
Yeah, you got your
connection.
management and console ports on there. So pretty cool stuff.
Let's start with the backplane because I know a lot of people want to talk about latency, but let's start off with that piece. What can this guy handle? Can it handle all this traffic?
Right, so we talked, it's wire speed, no oversubscription, right? It does about 952 million packets per second, 1.28 terabit per second.
Wow, okay.
Switching capacity, right? So very, very high performing. We talked about, and part of the reason it's long is it's front to back and back to front airflow, right? So it allows us to bring in the air from the front or the back and cool it, right? It's ultra low latency on the 40 gig.
1.5 microseconds, right?
Yeah, less than 1.5 microseconds on the 10 gig.
Pretty
It
quick.
Cut through.
So no oversubscription, right? So 1.28, I've got not quite that sitting on the front here to plug in. So I'm not going to have an issue where there's buffering going on, right? Where I have to fight for some of the traffic. That's one very important piece. That latency is the same scenario on the 10 gig ports or the 40 gig ports, or
Yeah, it's
Do we
ultra
know?
low latency on the, I don't have the exact numbers on the 40 gig, but ultra low latency on the 40. And
So this is really cool because I'm already thinking of some things where we might use this in a scenario. In an enterprise scenario, for instance, if we've got a blade chassis, we're able to uplink some of the HP virtual connects directly, right? Some of the 40 gig virtual connects from their new 40 gig interconnect, and so that's bringing down a lot of the port costs, right? If I can just grab a couple of pairs of 40 gigs off of each chassis and consolidate them onto these boxes, I've still got all these open for a lot of other options, right? Most importantly, a ton of SAN space, right, where we can do a lot of SAN. From an architectural perspective, do you, because you and I had some discussions on this,
Yep.
Matt, where do you see this fitting in on the in the data center for our customers?
Sure. So there's a couple spots, right? So if you have somebody that wants a lower cost, top of rack switch for their data center, I mean, these guys slide right in there. So there's also another model, the AF, which doesn't do the FCOE, so that it's the same architecture.
Okay.
But instead of using these
The fancy optics.
dual mode optics, you can do same thing, 40 and 10 gig out of there.
So I have a customer that doesn't have any fiber channel needs, maybe just a nice SCSI SAN. The
Yeah.
the AF may be an option for
Right.
them.
But
Okay.
so for this one, I mean, this one has a lot of plays. It's like a Swiss Army knife of top of rack, basically. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with it, as we talked about there. So we won't get too into the SDN piece, but I mean, with OpenFlow and things like that, there's programmability that you can do on this switch that allows you to be very flexible if you're in a VMware environment or Citrix or things like that. But what we're really looking at, where would we as Vology position it? We would put it in anywhere in like a small or medium-sized data center. They want something simple. You want to put a pair of these at your top of rack. If you're an existing HP customer and you're going from some of the older gig switches and you want a really fantastic switch there, you drop this guy in there, do whatever you want with it. If you have some older storage that's got fiber channel, you can roll him in there. Legacy stuff you can roll into here as well, and then you're future-proofing yourself as well in there. So you can upgrade your 3-par, your blade servers, whatever you want inside here,
Yeah.
and this is going to handle it.
There's a lot of talk about SDN, there's a lot of talk about OpenFlow. Where is HP positioning themselves with this switch and with their solutions? Because I know that there's a lot of talk about this IRF. Maybe you can fill us in on IRF, and also talk about some of the management tools that are there that this is sort of a catalyst for.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up, right? That's kind of a differentiator for HP. That is our switch virtualization technology, right? It allows us to take multiple switches to up to 9 and turn them into one single virtual switch, right? So it increases performance, increases resiliency in the network, and provides sub 50 millisecond failover in the event of,
Wow.
of issues, right? So on the Ethernet side, we could stack 9 of these, using IRF, and on the fiber channel side today it's 2.
So you can stack up to 9 of these guys
It's a virtual
As a
switch.
single
as one virtual
That's
switch,
correct.
and manage it as one switch.
Right.
Wow, okay.
And so from a management perspective, I mean, obviously there's command line interface, right?
Right.
So, there's things we do with command line for people like us that kind of like
Right.
the command line
A little
stuff.
quicker
It's
for you
there,
guys,
right?
yeah.
We have IMC, which is Intelligent Management Center, which is our kind of single pane of glass management that manages not only our network and manage other competitive products as well. It's a very modular network management platform. We talked briefly about the VAN Fabric Manager.
Mhm.
That is a plug-in for it that will allow us to kind of look at our converged Ethernet fiber channel environments.
When things come together for server virtualization and desktop virtualization, because that's a big piece, right? I mean, one of Vology's biggest things right now is the world of virtualization. And this is starting to permeate deeply into the networking world, especially with SDN. So I find it very interesting, right, that HP is setting this path up for some of the HP networking. Is there any added value you think on the future path? Is there some way to fit in some cloud features? Are there ways for us to plug in to something bigger and broader, bigger picture with this, that this is offering us in comparison to, say, even some of the old ProCurve or some of the competition?
So this is the 5900 CP. It's part of a bigger family of the 5900 series products, right?
Right.
Part of our FlexFabric or data center products. Top of rack, right? So we talked about you might have mentioned the 5900 AF, where, really if a customer is just looking for an Ethernet environment, doesn't really have any plans for FCOE or anything like that may be a better fit, right, from a cost perspective. Customers that know that, I mean, obviously have high bandwidth Ethernet needs, know they're going to be going down the FCOE path. This is the perfect box. Now, what we've done is all of the CommWare 7 stuff is going to support OpenFlow version 1.3, right? Which
Okay.
is the southbound protocol between the physical devices and our software-defined
Okay.
networking controller, which ties into the cloud apps and the other things using IMC. So, you're future-proofing yourself.
Kind of
Like-
opening doors for some of the cloud stuff that could be
Absolutely.
valuable,
I mean-
right? It may not be valuable to you now, right?
Well, you look at the way it's going. I mean, it's software-defined networking, it's software-defined data centers, right? I mean, we see that's certainly a trend. So, I mean, this is investment protection today for those types of applications in the future.
So I'm hearing a lot here. Maybe you guys can add to it. Some of the values of this are, the first thing that comes to my mind is is that, first of all, HP isn't overpriced. So there's already probably, this is going to be one of the most affordable top-of-rack solutions that you can find on the market. Secondly, very open, right? So sounds like we're open flow, we're ready for open flow, we're getting ready for it. We're continuing to converge, not just the switching and advanced technologies, but the management consoles are converging to some degree. And so we're looking at IMC, which is what we use now to manage this, if you're a GUI-oriented sort of network admin. There's still CLI options, because I saw you in there working on the CLI side. These two are CLI types, right? Not necessarily GUI types. And then we're going to see maybe as things mature from HP side, we're going to see them bring a lot of the management consoles together so that we still remain under one single point of glass and continue to manage this much more easily. So guys like myself can mess things up, so guys like these guys can go in there and fix it at another time, right? So I think that there's a lot of values there, but more importantly, there's a future-proof piece to this. If you're a company that acquires a lot of other companies, if you're looking at virtualization, if you have greenfields, I think that the 5900CP might be a good option if you have an infrastructure that requires shared storage. If you have an infrastructure that requires shared storage today that's still not fiber channel, maybe it will be one day. For the price that you can get a 5900CP, you can actually save a lot of money on purchasing a pair of, typically you get a pair of fiber channel switches, right? If I have a SAN, maybe we could spend a moment just talking about what your typical scenario looks like, right, compared to what a converged picture. Let's say I have four servers, right? Let's say I have four HP DL380s. I have a SAN, let's say I have a 3-par SAN that's fiber channel only. High level, what would my network look like to consolidate all that?
So your old design would be, you'd have a pair of separate fiber channel switches, and then you'd have a pair of separate, classically gigabit Ethernet switches with maybe some 10 gig uplinks or maybe some earlier 10 gig switches. So what you're doing is you're kind of collapsing that stuff down into a pair of fully redundant, top of rack. You look at this, you've got 2 rack units of space taken up, right? Instead of 4 or more, depending on what you had in there. And another thing that you're getting around too is a lot of the other vendor switches have a lot of licensing cost on top. So George kind of hit that earlier. I'm going to hit it again. You can do all of this stuff. The
without
fiber
paying
channel
extra,
Ethernet,
right?
Without paying extra. There's no extra licensing for layer 2.
So I have 100% use and operation of this switch upon purchase.
Right.
So the entry level price isn't a teaser in, oh, wait a minute, you actually needed 40 gig? Oh, wait a minute, you wanted to use some converged technology. Right. Pay as you go, pay as you grow can also be a trap. So we're fully ready to go. George, I can't thank you enough for making it out here in person. I really appreciate you coming out here and giving us a lot of information on the HP box. Matt, as always, really appreciate you coming out here and lending your incredibly valuable Vology IP brain to help us kind of break through some of the stuff and get this figured out. He gets to not only do a lot of design work and have a lot of phone conversations about the networks, but he also gets to break into some of the data centers and rack up and even configure, stand up some of these environments. I'm sure not as much as he'd like to, though, right, George?
Yeah, I mean, it's more on the proof of concept pre-sale side. I certainly don't get as much as I'd like to, but yes.
No, that's the sign of a true sales engineer, right? If you're willing to get away from the grease board. So I appreciate you making it here today. We're very excited to talk about a switch that I think HP has put a lot of time and effort, research development into. Offers a lot of value, a lot of features, specifically on one top. How does that help me out when I have to run the business unit of IT?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with cutting costs in the enterprise data center, right? And I think the biggest area where we see that in convergence is the server I/O consolidation, right? So we're simplifying the connectivity from the servers to both the Ethernet network and the storage network, right? So we reduce the number of hardware, the NICs that we need. We reduce the cabling. We can reduce the ports on the switches and reduce power as we have less devices in the network, right? And all of that translates down into lower CapEx and lower OpEx.
Right, because I have to buy less switches, right? And I need to manage and carry, which is data center conversion. So, if I may, let's get straight to it, George. From your perspective, what is data center convergence when it comes to the networking side?
So, I mean, I think we hear a lot today about convergence, right? Converged infrastructure, converged data center, that type of thing. And the reality is, traditionally, everything's been siloed, right? We have our networking, we have our storage, we have our servers, etc. And the idea of data center convergence is to take the networking, the Ethernet networking side and the storage side and converge it into one network, right? A converged network.
What are some of the benefits of data center convergence? And keep it high level. If I'm a business owner, Hey everybody, Neil Teresiano here, your host for Vology's Wireside Chats. We're here for a special edition of Partner Spotlight, where we're going to take a look at HP's product suite, specifically under HP Networking, the 5900CP. So I have with me here today George Casos from HP. George is both a propeller head and a rack monkey, maybe service attachments on less switches.
Certainly.
And I think, you wouldn't necessarily argue against the idea that it should be or could be a little easier to manage for an IT department, considering that in this case, converging the switch means I'm taking many different switches and switch functions and putting them into one particular switch and managing it, I assume, under one single pane of glass.
One single pane of glass, that's right. That's a perfect entryway into kind of why, what's HP's vision of the data center, what's HP's vision of the converged
Sure.
data center, right? So, and I think the products we're going to talk about today are a perfect example of this convergence.